This podcast is in partnership with our friends at Airbnb. When I'm traveling with family and friends, I find that staying in an Airbnb always brings us closer together. What can I say? Some trips are simply better in an Airbnb. All right, let's get back to the show. Chicago. Oh my gosh.
My last name's Rudolph. Of course I'm good with Christmas decorations whenever you want.
Can you explain to a normal football fan how Sam Darnold is now good?
For me in Minnesota, I would have had 15 different quarterbacks.
Only you can make Mac Jones look worse.
Get lost. Clearly I didn't push off.
I think he has less ribs than Adam and Eve.
You're not fast enough to be a wide receiver, so you're kind of just a tight end.
From Wondery, I'm Annie Agar, and this is The Offensive Line. Welcome to The Offensive Line, you guys. We're here to make some picks, talk some shit, and hopefully make you some money. I'm Annie Agar, here with our guest today, former Pro Bowl tight end, former Viking, Giant, Buccaneer, and co-founder of Alltroo himself, the man himself, the legend, Kyle Rudolph. Thank you, Kyle, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Eddie. I'm extremely excited about this. Obviously, got to meet you last year in West Lafayette as we were there. I was working Ohio State, Purdue, and have followed you ever since, and extremely excited to join you today.
I mentioned Alltroo in the open. Talk to the people a little bit because they might not know your philanthropic side here, Kyle. So what's going on with Alltroo?
So in July of 2021, myself, Jason Zucker, who is NHL player for the Buffalo Sabres, we did a ton of stuff together, philanthropic, in the Twin Cities community. When he was playing for the Wild, I was playing for the Vikings. And during the pandemic, we couldn't have any of the events that we normally had. And it was golf tournaments, galas, wine fests, fashion fests, all kinds of fun things to ultimately just raise money for the kids, the patients at the hospital. And it made us think about fundraising a little differently. And as professional athletes, we have such an incredible platform, not only to spread awareness for these incredible causes, but to also raise money. And oftentimes that money is raised just from corporate sponsorships or high net worth individuals. Mm-hmm. And what we've created at Alltroo is the opportunity for diehard fans to have the opportunity to support their favorite athletes, their favorite teams, their favorite causes. And it's been extremely exciting for us over the last 3 years to allow athletes, entertainers, musicians to engage their true fan base, their diehard fans that buy tickets to all their stuff and have their merchandise, because you can enter to win these once-in-a-lifetime experiences with them for as little as a $10 donation. So it truly democratizes that winning process. Today was a big day for us. We just hit $8 million of charity in those 3 years.
So, let's go.
To be able to raise money for these incredible causes, I think we've hit 175 different nonprofits that we've benefited over the course of the last 3 years. And for me, as a former player, oftentimes the transition into retirement is difficult.
Yeah.
But this is really what pulled me away from football, to have the opportunity to do this on a daily basis, still be around sports, be involved in music and entertainment, which I love so much, while also raising money for these incredible causes.
Before we get into the meat of the show, we like to start off the show with something called Too Offensive here, Kyle. These are storylines this week that were too offensive for you and I to even discuss, even for me. So I'll just give them 10 seconds of my time, and then I throw them in the NFL vault of history to never be talked about again. The first one, the Jets. Oh, dear God. I'm sure you guys heard they fired Joe Douglas this morning, actually. They're a pitiful organization. Aaron Rodgers is not who they thought he was. Their defense isn't what they thought it was either. And then moving on from that, we have the matchup of the century, Thanksgiving Day. We have Cooper Rush and Tommy DeVito. As you guys heard, Daniel Jones was benched for their third string quarterback, not even Drew Lock. Atrocious. Guys, go love your family on Thanksgiving. You're going to spend some quality time with them. And lastly, Taysom Hill. And this leads into my question for Kyle, because Taysom Hill can play about every position on the field. The Browns can't even play one. How annoying is that maybe for a tight end? I don't know if annoying is the right word, but wild. And is he changing the tight end position because of all of the versatility that he has?
Yeah, I think Taysom gives us street cred.
Yeah.
Oftentimes people look at the tight end position as you're not big enough to be an offensive lineman, or you're not fast enough to be a wide receiver. So you're kind of just a tight end. And well, Taysom, I mean, he's so versatile. He gives us so much street cred to be like, hey, we could play quarterback, receiver,
Mm.
offensive line, like whatever you want. We're there for you. Running back. So we love Taysom. We accept him in the tight end world. And he definitely adds to our street cred, that's for sure.
Okay, let's get started with our first game. Man, I didn't think we would start this early, but it is a Tuesday, and I'm feeling good this week, guys. We have Minnesota at Chicago. Chicago's +3. Chicago, oh my gosh. I don't know if I want to get into it quite yet because I know we're going to be talking about the Bears more. But man, they might be cursed. It's a cloudy day here in Chicago today, and I can only imagine that God has just given up on this city because that was the worst ending to a game they could have ever anticipated. And it was on Eberflus too, but we'll get into that in a minute. First of all, though, let's talk about Minnesota. Sam Darnold. Can you explain to a normal football fan how Sam Darnold is now good? If he is good. He's like one of those players I still have not figured out if he is or not because it's Sam Darnold. We know all the stipulation around Sam Darnold, but he's good now. So please explain that to the people.
Oftentimes with these quarterbacks, it's hard to judge them based on the situation that they're drafted into. You look at Sam Darnold and the previous two teams in which he played meaningful games for, the Jets and the Panthers. Are there two worse situations in football right now than either of those two organizations? Maybe you could argue Cleveland,
Yeah.
but it's like I just who can have success in that type of environment, that type of situation. And so when you see Sam go to San Francisco for a year in which he gets to sit behind Brock Purdy and learn from Kyle Shanahan and understand a system of football that's been successful really everywhere it's gone. We know the Shanahan Kubiak tree and all the success that it's had across the NFL. Then you pair him with a guy like Kevin O'Connell. And I've gotten to know Kevin pretty well. Never played for him, but being in Minnesota as long as we were, it gets weird when you're closer to the head coach's age than you are to a lot of the players. But that's how it was when Kevin came to Minnesota. So, we played some golf. We hung out. Our wives are similar in age, and we have kids in similar in age.
Yeah.
So getting to know Kevin and seeing, how he brings the best out of people on the offensive side of the ball. It's not a surprise that Sam has now found success when you pair him with a head coach and a play caller who is going to put him in favorable situations. You pair him with an offense that has the best receiver in football that he can always rely on. They've got TJ Hawkinson now back healthy, who's a really good tight end. Your boy Aaron Jones, you add him. He's just so versatile at the running back position. When you're a quarterback in that scenario and you don't have to be the guy that goes out there week in and week out making plays that you might not be comfortable making, you have easy throws and you get the ball in the hands of all these guys. All of a sudden now confidence starts building. You're like, man, I am a good quarterback. Like, it kind of takes you back to your USC days.
Yeah.
And when you have to make a clutch throw at the end of a game that when you were the quarterback of the Jets, the whole time you're sitting there probably thinking in your head, like, God, don't throw another interception, or you're seeing ghost, as we all heard about on the infamous New England game. You're not seeing those ghosts anymore because this head coach and system and the guys around you have instilled so much confidence in you to go out and kind of unlock the potential that's why you were a top 5 draft pick.
That's a great point. And you can feel the confidence just oozing from him the second he stepped on the field the first game. And I think, and like you said, attribute that a lot to Kevin O'Connell. We saw it in Washington, a great quarterback coach. But in terms of J.J. McCarthy, because now the future might be a little weird with him, does he get playing time? Does he see the field? Because I think before he got injured, I think the plan with what people are saying about Kevin O'Connell, I don't think he would have started him right away because he wouldn't have just thrown a kid out there with no idea of what's going on in the NFL. Is it the first couple games out there? Do we see a switch to JJ? I mean, obviously he's the future franchise quarterback for that organization, but will he see the field when he is healthy?
I think there's a number of factors that play into it. I think ultimately going into the year, I completely agree with you that the plan was Sam is the quarterback, and ultimately that gives JJ the chance to transition to being an NFL quarterback without taking the lumps of a rookie quarterback that's just thrown into the fire, arguably on a bad team. Because the only way that JJ was going to play is if Sam didn't go out and win football games. So, being on the other side of our Vikings-Packers border battle, we've watched you guys do it twice over the last 20 years where you have a first round quarterback that doesn't come in and play right away and he sits for a couple years, and then ultimately you have your franchise quarterback for the next 15. Over the course of those 15 years, for me in Minnesota, I would have had like 15 different quarterbacks. So we're trying to get away from that, and ultimately if this is what allows JJ to sit for a couple of years and set himself up for the success that Aaron saw replacing Brett and then Jordan saw replacing Aaron, I think that's an ideal scenario. But again, that all could go down the drain if Sam balls out to the level where now you got to pay him $50 million a year.
Right. Yeah.
So I think the contract piece plays a huge part into it, because when you're paying your receiver $35 million a year, you're paying a tight end almost $18 million a year. They have so many pieces on defense. The roster is almost built for, Sam's making 10, JJ's on a rookie deal. It would be hard to finagle the cap to fit a top 10 paid quarterback. So I think in an ideal scenario, Sam is there for sure this year. Obviously, I don't think JJ comes at any point in this year, being that he had the surgery, but who knows in terms of next year and the following year.
That's what people were talking about this morning, just referencing the game last night, the Monday night game. That rookie window is so, with CJ Stroud I'm referring to.
Yeah.
Having him on a rookie contract, everybody's like, oh, well, this is a little setback from the year that the Texans were expecting. They were expecting more because he's on this rookie deal. And man, that window is going to close quickly when he keeps getting better and better and progressing. So, some people, unlike the Green Bay Packers, don't pay their quarterbacks millions and millions of dollars. Oh, when you referred to a franchise guy, I can only imagine you were talking about Malik Willis. Jordan Love, figure it out. Jordan Love, or Matt LaFleur. It could be the red zone offense. I was not impressed. We'll get into Green Bay in a little bit, but let's talk about Chicago, because, like I said, Minnesota at Chicago, they're +3. Chicago's +3. I need your pick for this game, Kyle. What are you feeling? Which direction is this game going to
go? My non-biased pick would be, I'm taking the Vikings to cover -3.
I liked the non-biased throwing that.
Yeah, it's not biased at all. But I will say the only thing that scares me is just like history. I was actually on with Bears' current tight end, Cole Kmet, who fellow Notre Dame alum. Yep. And I said this to him this morning on his podcast. It's like, unlike when the Packers go to Lambeau, like they just win every time. Like when the Packers go to Soldier Field, they just win every time. When we go to Soldier Field, no matter what the records are, we can't seem to ever win there. Like I was 2 or 3 and 7 or 8 or something like that. And
that's crazy.
For a stretch, like it was us in Green Bay competing to win the division every year. And then the Bears and Lions were kind of just the Bears and Lions. So that's the only thing that worries me, I have, Cole's there, their quarterback coach, Ryan Griffin, is a good friend of ours. Kevin Warren was with the Vikings forever. Absolutely love him to death. Want to see them do well. Rookie quarterback going against the Brian Flores defense, like it's just a recipe for disaster.
Credit to Caleb, because he did look pretty good last game.
Ultimately, I'm taking the Vikings to cover the spread. I think it's going to be a long day for a Bears offense that's trying to figure it out and find their identity, because I've played against a flow defense multiple times, once with a backup quarterback and once with Kirk Cousins, who 8-year veteran Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. It's hard. It's really hard going against that defense.
Okay, I like it. I think I'm going to ride with you on that one. I'm going to take Minnesota. I mean, I obviously am because I can't take Chicago. Speaking of the Bears, we're going to do a little game called So Long. The Bears have not yet fired Matt Eberflus, which is shocking to me. But you know what? I honestly will be sad when he leaves because the content has just been great. You know, there's a lot of things I'll miss about him. I'll miss his decision making. Who else would hand it to your backup center when you need a touchdown? Who would do something like that? Where can you find someone who's worse at managing a game clock than a preteen in Madden? I will miss all these things about Matt Eberflus. With love, I'm going to tell a few players and coaches how much I will miss them this season. So long, Daniel Jones. DJ, to those who love him. I do not, however, but to those who do. We'll miss your confused stares, your total lack of awareness, and most importantly, how you scammed the Giants out of $160 million like you're a Nigerian princess looking for a sugar daddy. I will miss you, Daniel Jones. Next up, Doug Peterson. This is an important one. Doug Peterson, I really will miss your idiotic stares, your undying love for Press Taylor, so much that it keeps getting you fired, and you keep going back like an obsessed girlfriend. Only you can make Mac Jones look worse. And lastly, this one's an important one because this is personal to me, Mike McCarthy. Mike, I'll miss you the most, not just because you remind me of Santa, but because without you, I wouldn't have the constant reminder that even when you win a Super Bowl, you can still suck as a head coach. Thank you to all three of these fine gentlemen. They will be missed in the NFL. So long, guys. I would say it's been a pleasure, but it has not been. Do you think that'll actually happen? Do you think these coaches will, I mean, Daniel Jones obviously is already on the way out, but will these coaches be getting fired, do you think, anytime soon? Is this a mid-season firing that we would see here?
I'd be very surprised. Obviously, Jacksonville is on the bye week this week, and
you know, you start to fire a coach.
Well, you start to hear some rumblings going into the game in Detroit, and when you lose a game by almost 50 in the
yikes,
all league, it's just like if there were any debates at all amongst the owner and whoever he's making the decisions with, you know, do we need to move on from head coach, GM, just head coach, just GM? You'd certainly think that would kind of solidify that decision.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then the Mike McCarthy piece, ultimately, I think it's something clearly he's not going to be the head coach moving forward because he's on an expiring contract.
Yeah.
So we know that will not be renewed. Ultimately, it boils down to, you know, quite honestly, in my opinion, if Jerry has someone else that he wants to make the head coach, you know,
which is what it's going to come down to.
That's what it'll come down to.
Just puppets for him. Yeah. Well, we hope for the best for those guys sometimes. When we come back from the break, Kyle and I are going to rewatch a video that is slightly embarrassing. Guys, it's a good thing I don't overreact to things, okay? So just stay tuned for that right here on The Offensive Line. When I went to Arizona for the big game, I actually stayed a little bit further away from downtown because I knew it was going to be absolute chaos. Instead, I stayed in this amazing Airbnb that had a fitness center and a pool, which I definitely took advantage of. I had to travel all over Arizona for that trip, and it got a little overwhelming, and that Airbnb was my true sanctuary. There are so many pockets in Arizona, I had a lot of places to choose from. So the next time I'm booking an Airbnb, I'm going straight to the guest favorites. Guest favorites on Airbnb highlight places that have consistently great reviews from previous travelers. I can quickly see which ones are a real crowd pleaser, so I know I'm booking a winner. Some trips are just better in an Airbnb because you get that home away from home feeling. You have your own space to spread out, recharge, and you don't feel like you're just living out of a suitcase. All right, guys, the NFL season is rolling along and the contenders are separating from the pack. The only thing that hasn't changed this season, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and the best place to bet touchdowns. We don't care how they get them, we just want to bet on them, and DraftKings Sportsbook is the place to do it. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code TOL. That's code TOL for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bet must win to receive reward. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see See dkng.co/ftball.
All right, guys, welcome back to the offensive line. Last week, the Bears, as we all know, lost to the Packers with a crazy blocked field goal. And I had it all on camera, so here's my reaction.
Soldier Field can change all of that right here,
Oh my God.
right now.
Oh, man. Come on, miss it. Oh my God, miss it. It's blocked! It's blocked! No way! No way! Let's go, baby! Let's go, baby! No way! What a miserable win for the Green Bay Packers, but it's a win. Oh my God, I cannot believe this. It was a terrible win. It was a really bad one. But Kyle, you're the analyst here. You're an analyst for Peacock. So why don't you break down my reaction? What are your immediate reactions to my reaction?
My immediate reaction is like the nervous energy. I mean, I was sitting there watching the game live as well, actually getting ready to run out and do some errands after the morning window games had closed. And I knew something was going to happen. Like either Cairo was going to just miss the kick completely or it was going to get blocked, because you just knew that's how the game was going to end, A, for Green Bay, and B, against Chicago. And so, like, your eye is incredible because I didn't notice it got blocked right away. I'm like, well, clearly it's not going in, but I didn't see if he just missed it or if a defensive lineman was able to get a hand on it.
That's because I was standing inches away from my TV, so maybe my eyes caught the ball more. Okay, enough of the reaction video. We've experienced it. You know, the other thing that people said a lot about too was there's a Christmas tree in the back of it.
I did see the Christmas decor.
Yes, and that was harsh. Some people were a little harsh on that. I'm a big Christmas tree up November 1st because I love the holiday so much and it brings me so much happiness. So why not make it last longer? But what are your opinions on?
I am a big, like, I love Thanksgiving, good food, football. So I see both sides.
Yep.
I don't go after those. My last name's Rudolph. Like, of course I'm good with Christmas decorations whenever you want.
That's true.
But man, like, I'm also an advocate for Thanksgiving, and I will fight for Thanksgiving to make sure that it's not overlooked. But at the same time, you know, like, why not? Like, let's go for it. Let's get the especially when you live up north, like living in Minnesota, it's like there's probably still
there's nothing else to be happy about in the winter.
Yeah. Well, and we would always put our Christmas lights up right away after Halloween because it's dark at 4:15.
Yes.
So
it literally got dark yesterday at 4:38 in Chicago.
Yeah.
That's
So
ridiculous.
totally get it. It's a mood thing. It lightens things. You need it. Seasonal depression is real.
I was going to say, killing that seasonal depression.
So love it. I support it. I am an advocate for Thanksgiving, though. I love that holiday.
That's
so
fair.
we make sure. And then the day after Thanksgiving, if you Christmas music, like that's kind of where I draw the line. It's like, if you want to put the decor up November 1st, go for it. But like, we don't need to be bumping Christmas music right now. Like, let's. That's
true, because then it would get old by the time Christmas comes around.
Yeah.
I'm game with that.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Okay, speaking of seasonal depression and just depression in general, let's get back to the Chicago Bears. Over the last dozen years, no team has been a bigger thorn in my side than the 49ers, which you guys might think it'd be Chicago, but it is the damn 49ers. 5 times they've eliminated us. It's always postseason games, and I absolutely hate it. There's a 49ers bar here in Chicago, which I can only imagine is to spite Packers fans. That's the only thing I can think of. And I accidentally walked into it one day. Long story. But this brings me to our next topic here, modern rivalries, because we had Patrick Peterson on the show last week, and he said that the Bears-Packers is no longer a rivalry because when you're dominating, when Matt LaFleur's he's 11-0 against the Bears, not a rivalry. What do you think, Kyle? Who's the Packers' new rival?
Well, I mean, I think you have your rival on the other border as well, in the Vikings.
And that's what's amazing is why don't people think in division first? But my go-to is 49ers.
You know, because we do, and I could not agree more with Pat P in terms of Bears, Packers. It's not a rivalry anymore. It's tradition because they've played for over 100 years. But in order to be a rivalry, there has to be wins on both sides. Like Yankees, Red Sox, Duke, North Carolina, Minnesota, Green Bay. we've gone back and forth. And you look at a majority of the division winners over the last 10, 15 years, it's the two of us with a couple Chicago sprinkled in, and ultimately Detroit last year. So
Yeah.
I would say I put Minnesota, Green Bay there. Obviously, when you look at the terms of the NFC playoff picture, in the last decade, I could see San Fran, Green Bay, and it has been, unfortunately, San Fran knocking Green Bay out of the playoffs so often. But yeah, I think if you're going to go anywhere outside of Chicago, Green Bay, I would say Minnesota, Green Bay.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would say like maybe Dallas potentially if they get it together just because of the history there. But it's history. Like there's a difference between a rivalry and just history. Like you said, some tradition, some history.
Well, and I think when you see the NFC playoff picture, like for me personally as a Minnesota Vikings player, like we started to develop a rivalry against New Orleans. And it wasn't because we played them most of the time once a year in the regular season, or maybe we didn't play the NFC South in the regular season, so we didn't play them at all. Whereas you're playing them twice a year every year, and if there's the division's going through Green Bay, the division's going through Minnesota, it's Detroit, like those you so much more is put on those two games, and you have to win your home game against them, and if you can steal the one on the road, it's huge for the playoffs. But then there's a whole nother rivalry dynamic when for us it was us and the Saints multiple times in the NFC playoff race, and two of them ended on the last play of the game. Like you want to create a rivalry, have walk-off playoff wins against the same opponent. That creates a lot of animosity between fan bases. They beat us by knocking Brett out in 2009 and ultimately won the Super Bowl. We beat them twice. Minneapolis Miracle. I pushed off in a year in which offensive pass interference was reviewed. Like, get lost. Like, clearly I didn't push off because it was the year the rule was instilled because of the year prior when it didn't get called for you.
Dang.
So I think that's really what starts to develop these rivalries. And I think, whether it's Green Bay, San Fran, Dallas, you think of historical playoff implications, and I could see why those start to formulate.
That's a good point too, because the play and the moving around in the league affects different rivalries too. Because like Sean Payton just swept the NFC South, and everybody's like, "Oh, Sean Payton still owns the NFC South." Okay, let's just calm down here. He's in a totally different place, a totally different spot in the country now, but that rivalry doesn't go away. Okay, so speaking of this rivalry, Green Bay. Oh man, playing San Francisco this weekend, guys. By the way, Tom Brady called the Packers-Bears game this past week. I think he's calling this one too, probably. Thoughts on Tom Brady in the booth? I was a little worried the first game, but he's much better now. I don't know if they said, "Hey, go watch a bunch of tape of Tony Romo," but he's putting his own personal spin and opinion on things. Like in this Green Bay game, I think it was when Eberflus was going to call a timeout or didn't call a timeout quickly enough, and everybody was freaking out about it, and Tom Brady's like, "No, like this is what we're doing. He's got plenty of time. He's going to wait for the clock to wind." Like he'll put his mind and his idea of the game or the way he visualizes the game into the viewer's eyes. So quick little idea of what you think of Tom Brady in the booth.
First and foremost, had the fortune of playing with Tom my last year, so got to know Tom a lot. Had known Tom and had a relationship with Tom for a long time, being that I played for Coach Charlie Weiss at Notre Dame, obviously was Tom's offensive coordinator in their first 3 Super Bowls. So ultimately, it's like I just assumed, like everything else in life, Tom was going to be great at it. It's like, you can't have everything. Like you're a good-looking dude, you're the best football player ever. Like you're one of the nicest human beings. And I always be like, "Tell me about Tom Brady." And I'm like, "Well, he treats the janitor at $1 the same way he treats."
I hate to hear that. He's a great person.
Yeah, it's just like you can't have everything. And ultimately, I assumed, like, again, he's the greatest ever, and he's been in like the highest pressure situations on the field. He'll just roll into the booth. He's the coolest dude ever. He'll just kind of be the cool. You're Tom Brady. Like, if you just tell me stories, I'm gonna listen. And I was shocked I watched Dallas Cleveland his first game because I couldn't wait to watch his broadcast. And he was nervous. Like, you could
Yeah.
tell that he was nervous for his first broadcast. And I think that's all it was. It was just nerves for his first call. You watch every game since. He's calmed down. He's doing really, really well. I love listening to his calls. I love the stories that he tells, the analysis that he provides. There is no one smarter than him. Like, he knew every look of every coordinator we were playing every week. And it's just like, so for him to be able to like digest the volume of knowledge that he has, and not just the volume of football knowledge that he has, but the volume of stories that he has from the
Right.
course of 23 years in the NFL.
Jeez.
When he
And to
calms
be able
down,
to give that to people.
exactly, to be able to deliver that to the common fan that might not understand why Matt Eberflus is letting the play clock run all the way down and calling a timeout with 10 seconds left.
Right.
When we got to score. He's got 2 plays, and you don't need more than 10 seconds for 2 plays. So why would I leave any time on the clock potentially to have to kick off and give them a chance to score? And so when you could tell, like, once he relaxed, and it also, having not been in his shoes whatsoever, but have been in the booth before, like, there's this back and forth between your play-by-play guy and, they have Mike Pereira, the rules analyst, in there. And, there's just a lot of understanding kind of when your time is to talk and where you fit in and this flow that you have. And you knew he was going to be good at it. Like I said, he's good at everything. And he is getting really, really good as he's progressing.
Annoying sometimes that he is so good. Do you have a favorite Tom Brady story?
I think the story that I always tell when I get asked about Tom is because it's A, funny, and B, like, relevant to sports. So I had 47 touchdowns going into my last year in Minnesota. And it's like, at this point, like, I'm going to blow past 50. You start looking at like the top whatever all time for tight ends. It's like, I'm going to get into the top 10, we'll start climbing our way up.
Yeah.
I had 1 touchdown in 2020, 1 touchdown in 2021. And now I'm 16 games into the year in Tampa. And I'm like, all right, it's just meant to be. Like, I'm not supposed to have 50 career touchdowns. Like, this is just, I never had less than 3 in a year prior, and now I'm going to not get 3 in 3 years. And the last game of the year, we were playing the Falcons in a meaningless game. We had already won the division. We were playing Dallas at home, wild card round in the playoffs. But yet, Tom being Tom, he wanted to play. He's like, I'm not sitting out. Like, I'm going to play. He had like 2 records that he could break too. So he wanted to break those records, and then they took him out. And on the first drive, it was like a 3rd and 8. And, at this point, like, Tom was starting to get me more involved in the red zone stuff. And so my first play of the game, like, the personnel group gets called, and I knew exactly what the play was and that it was a chance for me to get a touchdown. So I run out there, like, play happens. Anyways, catch the touchdown. It's my 50th touchdown. And I'm like stoked. I finally got 50. Obviously, I keep the ball. Go to the sidelines, give it to the equipment manager. He's like, this is 50, perfect. We'll get it painted up, yada, yada, yada. That was Tom's last regular season touchdown pass ever.
That's crazy. I knew that was coming at the end. That's wild.
I have Tom's last regular season touchdown ball that is painted and says Kyle Rudolph's 50th career touchdown pass.
That is crazy.
Completely devalued, like, one of the best footballs.
I was going to say,
like,
did he want that
history.
at the end? And you're like, oh, well, it's kind of
no. And again, like, going back to Tom, like, that's how he is. I think even if he knew that was his last one at the time, no one knew that was going to be his last one. But even if he did, like, he doesn't care. He'd be like, yeah, babe. Like, he calls everybody babe. Like, yeah, babe, you keep it. Like, you got it. And it's like,
wow. Man, it's going to be hard to make fun of him. I will try my best still, though. But that's really cool. I love that.
Well, that's the bit. You make fun of him for being good at everything.
Right.
Like, I mean, come on.
Exactly. Like, he's just too good. And I think that the little bit of nervousness he had in the booth the first call was very, it kind of brought him back down to reality slightly. And you realize how amazing he actually is, because he's still a human being. Because, you have him on such a pedestal then when he actually does have a little bit of a, not even a slip up, just little nerves, you're like, oh yeah, he's like
human.
us. He's human. Yeah. All right, quick pick for this game. Are you taking San Francisco or Green Bay? Like I said, Green Bay is -2.5. I actually don't know if I said that, but Green Bay is -2.5.
Green Bay favored at home.
Yes.
-2. I'm taking the Packers.
Are you? Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm with the Packers.
I am too. It's Kyle Shanahan.
San Francisco, they've got some things to figure out.
They do. And it's not Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's been working with what he's got, I think, in my opinion. I think it's more of a manufacturer, Kyle Shanahan situation. I too am taking Green Bay, and a lot of injuries. Okay, talk about a lot of it. Well, I don't know if they've had as many injuries as they've had just very bad things happen to them this year. The Dallas Cowboys. You guys knew this was coming this week. We had to talk about it. Dallas at Washington. Washington, Kyle, is favored by 10.5. Oh, this is with a quarterback who I think he has less ribs than Adam and Eve. Jaden Daniels has been injured. He hasn't ran out of the pocket probably in the past 2 games, and they're favored by 10.5. We weren't going to talk about this one, but some catastrophic things happened Monday night, including the roof falling. Ryan Harris on air said, well, the floor fell out underneath the Cowboys, so why not the roof as well? This team cannot stop beating themselves. It's bad. It is really bad. Quick thoughts on this Washington Cowboys game.
It's funny because like the saying that everyone always go to is like, oh, come on. It's not like the sky is falling. Like,
and it is.
Well, it quite literally is falling in Dallas. So that's how bad it is down in Dallas. For
Chicken Little
Jerry.
is dying somewhere.
So when there's a double-digit spread in the NFL, like that's big. That's a big difference between 9.5 and 10.
Yep.
But I mean, just watch that Dallas team at home on Monday night, and
yikes.
I'm taking the Commanders and the 10.5 points. I think it's just Micah Parsons can only do so much. It's like, we could throw it to CD 12 times, but there's hopefully
there's
50
no run
something
game.
other plays. Yeah.
It's bad. It's bad in Dallas. It is really, really bad. And I don't know. I think I ended my video with it. I think it's time for the Cowboys to just close the curtain on their season. Pun intended. Because Jerry won't, guys. Jerry won't. Oh, man. Okay, so you're taking Washington plus 10 or minus 10.5. I am as well. Absolutely. Like you said, that's a lot. That's a big spread.
A lot of points, but
that's a lot of points. 10.5 points, guys, and that is still not our most offensive game of the week. That is coming up next, right here in the offensive line. Welcome back to the offensive line. Before we get to the worst game, the most offensive game of the week, we have another one. We have a Harbaugh. We should call it like a Harbowl. Harbaugh. It's Jim Harbaugh playing against his brother. A little sibling rivalry there. I know too much about that. Baltimore at the Chargers. They are +3. The Chargers are. The Ravens coach leads the series 2-0. John Harbaugh leads the series 2-0, including a Super Bowl win. Which Harbaugh, Kyle, do you trust the least in this situation with a lead? Because we both know that whether it's the Chargers charging or John Harbaugh just doing him and blowing a 10-point lead, something is going to happen to the lead. So who do you trust the least in that situation?
I'm going to go with John and the Ravens. I think it's not quite fair to pin the Chargers charging on Jim Harbaugh because that was a Brandon Staley thing.
Right. Correct. That's a great point. And Jim is unchargering them at this point.
Jim is uncharging them.
Game.
And Justin Herbert.
Eberflus, go look at that. Go look at some tape on Jim Harbaugh.
They're playing well. I will always take a home dog. So a home dog as talented and playing as well as the Chargers are. In Baltimore, it's like they have all this talent. They play so well for so long, and then you watch them, and Lamar has his kryptonites. Patrick Mahomes is the Pittsburgh Steelers. So yeah, we'll see. Ultimately, I'm taking the Chargers and those points.
Quick thoughts on Justin Herbert, because Well, Jim calls him Beast Herbert, so I probably should clarify. But he gets a lot of hate, and the Chargers are 7-3, and I think people forget that now. Like, they're sneaky good. They're sneaky good. And are you a Justin Herbert stan? Are you a big supporter of the Herbs?
Yeah, I mean, super talented. I remember early on in his career, like, watching cut ups on common opponents, because being in the NFC, obviously we didn't play a lot of the same teams as the AFC opponents, but every once in a while you'd see these AFC teams against the NFC team that we were playing. And Justin Herbert was a guy that just always jumped out on tape. Like, some of the throws that he makes, you're like, oh my goodness, like, that is insane.
Crazy.
And that was him as a young quarterback that just had these physical abilities, and they had receivers all over the field. And then you look at Jim Harbaugh come in there and just says, like, all right, see you later. Basically every receiver on the team. And yet they've started to do things differently. J.K. Dobbins, and Justin is just elevating his game to a whole nother level. So
Yeah.
super
I agree.
talented, big fan of Justin Herbert.
You have swayed me strictly with that argument that I'm taking the Chargers +3 as well. I probably would have anyway, because I'm fading the Ravens a little bit this year, which worked out pretty well for me to start the season. Okay, it is now time for Kyle. Our offensive line's most offensive game of the week. This is a rough one. Not as bad as like the Germany game, because we've experienced some pretty bad ones in the past. Germany game or the Thanksgiving game coming up is going to be pretty bad. But this one, you guys might be wondering which one it is. Denver at Vegas. Vegas is +5.5. Now, this is a little controversial because I know Denver is not offensive. They have a lot of offense. Their Bo Nix is looking great. Right up there now with Jane Daniels for Offensive Rookie of the Year. However, Raiders, not quite as well. So they're underdogs here, 5.5. What are your thoughts on this game, Kyle?
I'm going to take Denver. Yes, Bo Nix is playing better on the quarterback position. I remember really the last time I watched Denver, like, start to finish, was probably, in my opinion, the most offensive game that I've ever watched. Thursday night against the Saints. Like, thank God there was playoff baseball on that night. I could turn on something else. I mean, it was just awful. And so, but Bo is playing better, and Denver's defense is lights out. I mean, they're legit. And obviously we know Vegas' struggles on the offensive side of the ball. Yes, they've figured out that Brock Bowers is a stud. Ultimately, after that, what else is there? So I believe in Denver's ability to try to neutralize a tight end. And I say this with the bias of playing the position. It's, as a tight end, like, there's so many ways that you can neutralize us throughout the course of a game without just ultimately putting two guys in coverage. When you have a receiver,
Travis Kelce.
Well, yeah, when you have a receiver, you can move the receiver around. You can line them up in places. Like, for us, you can hit us with a defensive end every time we're releasing, or, you can kind of dedicate a backer who's off the ball. And it's like, hey, look, like, we got to find 89 at the beginning of every play, and you're going to hit him, and then you're going to cover him. When you have a receiver, like, you can move that receiver around and do different things to eliminate some of those coverage things that people like to do to take receivers out. So, I'm banking on Denver's ability to neutralize Brock, to slow the offense down enough to cover that spread and ultimately get the win.
I like it. This might be, I think I'm going to take Denver as well. This might be a little game for Offensive Rookie of the Year. But I think they should just give it to Brock Bowers for having put up with Gardner Minshew all season. The man deserves it. Okay, next up.
We'd love to see a tight end win Offensive Rookie.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Oh, love to see it. His odds are not
I think Jeremy Shockey was the last one.
I think it's like plus 1,100 right now, or plus 3,000. But, not impossible. It is not impossible. Okay, Kyle, I think this might be one of your favorite parts of the show from just our pre-show talk. It is time for No Offense. This is a part of the show where it's a safe place. You can rant about something that's bothering you. It could be in your personal life. It could be in the NFL. Mine happens to be always involving the NFL because that is my personal life. Basically, I have none. Okay, I'll start it off, and you have to start with no offense because then everybody knows it's not going to be offensive. And then you can either react to mine or go into yours, and then we can just feel better about ourselves. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. No offense, but Matt Eberflus should 100% have ran another play. You guys knew this was going to be about the Bears. I don't care if he brings up anything to the office, because he said we leaned on his long snapper. Run a damn play, Matt. I think what he was anticipating was that they wouldn't have enough time, or he relied on his kicker. He put confidence in his kicker. The ball trajectory goes up the closer you are to the field goal. Does everybody knows this but Matt apparently? The ball had such a low trajectory, it was lower than his coaching career. Okay, I don't agree with Matt Eberflus. I think he should be canned immediately. But you know what? While we're on the topic, keep him around because this is great for my Green Bay Packers. That is my rant of the day. I appreciate you guys being here. Felt great. That felt really good to get off my chest. I think kind of everybody in Chicago agreed with me, but there's always sometimes that I agree with Chicagoans. Okay, Kyle, your turn.
No offense, but the New York Giants, like, what are we doing? I get it. Let's all just go after Daniel Jones. We spoke about this after the segment in which DJ was included.
Yes.
I was like, I got something for the end of the show. So, I'll stick up for DJ when that's the case. And ultimately, like, let's be honest. My guy made $80 million over the course of 2 years. He's going to be okay. And let's be quite honest. We've seen what happened to Saquon Barkley, so he might be more than okay. Let's not all just act like Daniel Jones is the problem. Ultimately, it's an organization that has been held in such high regard for so long. Super Bowl championships, incredible players, founding fathers of the NFL. I have so much love and respect for the Mara family and what they've done with that organization, but what the path that we're going down at this point, and not only are you benching DJ, but you're benching him for the third string quarterback.
Yes.
You skipped the backup. So clearly you're telling me that this isn't about going out to try to win games. Because if you were going to win games, Drew Lock would be who you bench him for.
Right.
Hey, Indianapolis Colts, we feel like Joe Flacco gives us a better chance to win games than Anthony Richardson. Ultimately, he didn't. So Anthony's back out there.
Yeah.
Well, if you felt like this was a decision to not protect yourself from DJ's injury guarantee next year, or not to tank for a higher draft pick, you're not going to throw Tommy Cutlets out there. You're going to put the number 2 quarterback, who obviously is better because he beat him out in the competition that you had for your backup quarterback job in training camp. So no offense, but New York Giants, like, maybe it's time to look in the mirror a little bit. We've seen that firsthand with my good buddy Saquon Barkley being freed of what was going on up there in New Jersey.
That's got to be the most damning evidence of the New York Giants. That whole having a Hard Knocks in their in their office for that. What are you thinking? Like, you just look stupid. You look so stupid. Joe Shane, I don't know. I feel bad. I feel bad for that organization. And will I still make fun of them? Absolutely. Okay, let's go over our picks for this week. This might be, Kyle, the first time we have a clean sweep. We agreed on every single one of our picks. I've never done that, I don't think, in any of these episodes. I don't know if that's a good or bad sign.
Let's hope it's a good sign. We're seeing it clear.
Usually I get them wrong, so that is a good sign. We agreed on, just to recap, Minnesota -3 against Chicago. Green Bay -2.5 against the San Francisco 49ers. Washington -10.5 against Dallas. The Chargers +3 versus Baltimore. And Denver Broncos -5.5 at Vegas. So we'll see how that plays out. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you taking the time away from your kids. Man, it's probably like being on the podcast with another child over here, with my Green Bay Packer fandom. So it probably felt like you were just right back at home.
I appreciate it, Andy. It was a ton of fun to be on. I would definitely love to do it again sometime.
Of course, absolutely. That's it for this week, you guys. Of the Offensive Line, be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and you can watch our full podcast episodes on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And as always, you guys, Des didn't catch it. I'll see you next week.